Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show that takes the stack of research you've shared with us and boils it down to the absolute essential, must-know, surprising truth.
And today, we are undertaking a deep dive into, well, probably the single most influential yet most neglected aspect of human health.
Sleep.
Sleep. It's fundamental.
It is. And our mission today is to, cut through the noise and establish this one unequivocal message.
Which is that sleep is quite literally the most powerful anti-aging, anti-disease medicine available. It's the reset button.
The fundamental reset for the brain and the body.
Right. And we're working through some dense, highly scientific material here, I should say. But the goal is to shift how we all think about sleep.
Away from it being a luxury.
Or a sign of laziness. And reposition it as what it is, the non-negotiable bedrock of wellness.
I think we have to start by asking the listener, just a simple question.
Go for it.
Can you vividly recall the last time you woke up feeling completely refreshed? I mean, naturally, without an alarm clock, without hitting snooze.
Without immediately needing that cup of coffee to just, jumpstart a weary system.
Exactly. Because for most of us, for the vast majority, that feeling is tragically rare.
And that rarity, that is the public health crisis we have to confront. The data is so clear.
What does it say?
2/3 of adults, not in one country, but throughout all developed nations, fail to get the recommended 8 hours of nightly sleep.
2/3. That's a staggering majority of the industrialized world.
It is. And it means we're all operating under a state of chronic, low-grade neurological impairment.
And when we look at the consequences of that, they are not subtle. They're severe.
Yeah, let's just start with the hard numbers, the kind that make this impossible to ignore.
Because this isn't about just feeling a bit tired, is it? This is quite literally life and death.
The science is terrifyingly precise. Routinely sleeping less than 67 hours a night, it just fundamentally dismantles your immune system.
Dismantles it.
Which, in turn, more than doubles your lifetime risk of cancer.
Wow.
Furthermore, we now understand that insufficient sleep is a key lifestyle factor in the acceleration and pathology of Alzheimer's disease.
And we're not even talking about decades of bad sleep here, are we? The short-term impact it's immediate.
Exactly. And in the United States alone, get this, 1 person dies in a traffic accident every single hour due to a fatigue-related error.
Every hour.
We have normalized a level of exhaustion that is demonstrably more dangerous than driving while intoxicated, and yet we still treat it like it's just an inconvenience.
We have to change that.
We do.
So that sets the stakes pretty clearly. We're risking cancer, dementia, diabetes, and immediate fatality.
Right.
All because we see sleep as optional.
Right.
So let's figure out why it's so essential. Let's start with the core mechanics, how the brain actually manages this whole sleep-wake cycle.
Let's do it.
Sleep often feels like something that just happens to us, almost passively when we finally run out of steam.
But it's not passive at all. The science confirms it is an incredibly active, coordinated process.
And it's governed by 2 distinct measurable forces.
That's right. Let's talk about the 2-factor model of sleep regulation. The sources use this great analogy of 2 opposing lines on a graph.
Process S and process C.
Exactly. And that analogy is vital because it shows that sleepiness isn't just a deficiency. It's a balance of accumulation and rhythm.
Okay, so let's take the first one. Process S, the sleep drive.
This is the simplest one to understand. I like to think of it as the pressure cooker of sleep.
And that pressure is purely chemical, right? It's driven by a molecule called adenosine.
That's the one. The longer you are awake, the more adenosine builds up in your brain.
Creating more and more pressure.
More and more of an urge and intense pressure to sleep. You can visualize it like water filling a plugged sink throughout the day. That line on the graph for process S just rises steadily from the moment you wake up.
Until the moment you fall asleep. And sleep is the drain. It's the release valve.
Precisely. Once you enter healthy, sustained sleep, a mass evacuation mechanism kicks in. The brain gets to work degrading and removing all that adenosine that's built up.
And if an adult gets a full night, say 8 hours.
If you get approximately 8 hours of healthy, complete sleep, that purge is finished. The adenosine level goes back to its baseline, back to 0, and the pressure is lifted.
Okay, so that makes sense. But if adenosine is always rising when we're awake, why aren't we just collapsing from exhaustion by, say, 10 a.m.?
Good question.
The sources talk about this delightful sensation of being wide awake that happens in the morning, and that requires the second factor.
Process C.
Process C.
This is the circadian wake drive. It's your 24-hour rhythm generator, your internal hardwired biological pacemaker.
And it's completely indifferent to that first process, to process S.
Completely. It doesn't care if you've been awake for 2 hours or 22 hours. It just produces this steady, alerting boost that waxes and wanes over a very precise 24-hour schedule.
So it's like our body is generating its own internal energy, regardless of how tired we actually are. When is that energy boost at its peak?
It typically hits its highest point, providing the maximum degree of alertness around 11 a.m.
Okay, and the lowest point?
Conversely, it reaches its lowest point, that moment where your body is most biologically vulnerable to sleepiness, around 6 a.m.
That explains the morning productivity peak then.
It does.
That feeling of being wide awake happens mid to late morning, precisely because the circadian rhythm, process C, is on its powerful upswing.
And at the same time, your adenosine levels, process S, are still relatively low since you've only been awake for a few hours.
So when those two lines on the graph are furthest apart, high process C, low process S, you feel sharp and alert.
Exactly. And the greatest urge to sleep. That happens when process C is at its lowest point, that 6 a.m. misery point or that mid-afternoon energy dip.
And process S is high because you've accumulated a whole day's worth of adenosine.
The vertical distance between those two lines on the graph is the clearest, most objective measure of your desire to sleep.
And this mechanism, this two-factor model, really helps us understand the role of caffeine.
It does.
We mistakenly think caffeine gives us energy, but chemically, that's not what's happening at all.
No, it's entirely mislabeled. Caffeine is an adenosine receptor blocker.
A blocker.
It's a chemical that's basically masquerading as adenosine itself. It rushes into the brain, it plugs the adenosine receptors, and it essentially prevents the brain from perceiving that rising tide of the sleepiness chemical.
So you feel alert, not because you have more energy,
but because caffeine has erected a wall, just holding that mounting sleep pressure back from your conscious awareness.
So the pressure is still building up behind the wall, regardless of how alert we might feel.
It is.
And the payback, that famous caffeine crash, is so brutal because of this backlog.
It's a vicious backlash. The liver has an enzyme, Ep.1, that gradually degrades the caffeine over several hours.
And once that barricade is
that whole wave of accumulated adenosine, which has been patiently waiting, it all rushes back in.
Oh, wow.
So you get hit with the original sleepiness you had before your cup of coffee, plus all the extra adenosine that accumulated while the receptors were blocked.
That double dose.
That's the crash. And that's what drives people to reach for the next cup, locking them into a dependency cycle.
And the speed at which that barricade falls is entirely dependent on our individual biology, isn't it?
Yes, it's genetics. Specifically, variations in that CYP1A2 enzyme. Some rare individuals have a very efficient version that clears caffeine rapidly.
Those are the people who can have an espresso after dinner and sleep soundly.
Exactly. But others have a slow-acting version, making them hypersensitive. For them, even a morning cup can still be blocking receptors and disrupting deep sleep hours and hours later.
This changes as we age.
It does. As we get older, caffeine clearance slows down for everyone. We all become more vulnerable to its sleep-disrupting influence later in life.
So we've covered the mechanics of why we feel sleepy and the chemical roadblocks we impose on ourselves. But once we finally get there, once we cross that threshold into sleep, what actually defines that state?
It's more complex than just turning off the lights. It's defined by two universal, non-conscious indicators. The first is the total loss of external awareness, a sensory blackout.
We just stop perceiving the outside world.
Explicitly, yes.
But our sense organs, they're still receiving signals, right? A siren is still generating sound waves. Light is still hitting the retina. So where's the conscious perception shut down?
All those signals flood into the central hub of your brain, but their journey ends abruptly at the thalamus.
The thalamus.
It's a smooth, oval-shaped object, smaller than a lemon, and it acts as the ultimate sensory gate of the brain.
The gatekeeper.
At the onset of healthy sleep, the thalamus locks its gates shut. It's like a nightclub bouncer, imposing a sensory blackout and preventing those signals from reaching the cortex, where they would be consciously perceived.
That's incredible that one small structure can enforce that total sensory isolation.
It's remarkable.
And the second feature is just as fascinating, the radical distortion of time.
Consciously, we enter what the source material calls a chronological void. We lose all explicit track of time.
But at the same time, on a non-conscious biological level, the brain is logging time with astonishing precision.
Exactly. That's like when you wake up naturally at 5:58 a.m. completely unassisted, just moments before your 6 a.m. alarm is about to go off.
That's the internal timer at work.
The non-conscious timer is impeccably accurate, but then you have this contradictory distortion.
Time dilation in dreams.
Right. You hit the snooze button for 5 minutes, fall back into REM sleep, and you feel like you've experienced this long, elaborate dream narrative that lasted an hour or more.
So dream time, specifically during REM sleep, is consistently stretched relative to real objective time.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move inside the sleeping brain itself.
Yeah.
If we were to place electrodes on your head, the electrical landscape changes radically as we move from wakefulness into the different stages of sleep.
It does, and the sources use this wonderful analogy to explain brainwave activity.
The football stadium with a microphone.
It's the perfect way to visualize synchronization. During wakefulness, the brain activity is fast and frenetic, oscillating at 30 to 40 times per second.
So in the stadium analogy, that's like thousands of individual fans all having unique conversations.
Right. It's chaotic, desynchronized chatter. The microphone just picks up a blur of noise, but no single unified message.
But once we enter deep sleep, everything slows down. The crowd finds the unified voice.
Correct. In deep NREM sleep, or slow-wave sleep, brain activity dramatically decelerates to just 2 to 4 waves per second.
A 10-fold decrease in speed.
A massive drop. The neurons shift from chaotic chatter to a unified, synchronous, almost mantra-like chant. They all shout out exuberantly together.
That's the tall, high-voltage spike on the EEG.
And then they all fall silent together. That's the deep trough. The microphone over the stadium now picks up a clearly defined, unified, powerful roar, followed by a long, coordinated silence.
And this unified chant, this slow wave, it has a specific origin point in the brain, doesn't it?
It does. It's generated mostly in the middle frontal regions, right above the bridge of your nose and extending up your forehead.
And from there.
From that hot spot, the powerful, slow waves of deep sleep travel front to back, washing over the rest of the cortex like a tide, and they gradually dissipate in strength as they go.
So it's an active, deliberate, and highly coordinated state. It's designed for deep work.
Exactly.
What exactly is that deep work? What are the primary functions of NREM sleep?
Deep NREM sleep dominates the early part of the night, and functionally it acts as an excavatory force for memory.
An excavatory force, so it's digging something out.
It is. It's not about storage. It's about weeding out unnecessary or weak neural connections, the informational junk of the day, to prevent the brain from becoming clogged.
So it's cleaning house.
If you visualize the brain laying down a massive amount of raw clay during the day's learning, NREM sleep performs the initial, extensive removal of all the superfluous matter. It's making room for new learning tomorrow.
And then we have these brief protective moments within NREM sleep, the sleep spindles.
Yes, sleep spindles. They are sudden, punchy bursts of fast brainwave activity, and they often festoon the tail end of each slow wave.
And they're crucial for protecting sleep itself.
They act as nocturnal soldiers, shielding the sleeping brain from external environmental noises that would otherwise wake us up.
So the more powerful someone's sleep spindles are,
the more resilient their sleep is to disruption.
Okay, so then the brain shifts to REM sleep, the dreaming state, and the electrical activity just flips completely. It becomes fast and frenetic again.
That's right. REM sleep activity is an almost perfect electrical replica of attentive, alert wakefulness. It bears no resemblance to the synchronized, slow waves of NREM.
It's like the stadium goes back to chaotic chatter.
But even more so. In fact, advanced brain scanning studies have found that individual parts of the brain are up to 30% more active during REM sleep than they are even when we are awake and focused.
So we're asleep, often physically paralyzed, yet our brain is running a full sprint. What function does REM sleep perform in all this?
Well, if NREM sleep is the excavator removing clutter,
then REM sleep is.
REM sleep is the etching hand in memory. It dominates later in the night, and it works to strengthen the remaining neural connections, integrating new information into your existing knowledge base.
So it's the sculptor, enhancing the fine, detailed structures that emerged from NREM's initial culling.
A perfect way to put it.
And the fact that these two stages are not equally distributed across the night is critically important for understanding the consequences of short sleep.
This is a vital warning. NREM sleep reigns supreme in the first half of the night, taking care of that massive pressure release and the cleanup.
And REM sleep reigns supreme in the second half, handling integration and emotional regulation.
They are deliberately imbalanced.
Which means if you are someone who consistently loses the last 2 hours of an 8-hour night, say you have to wake up at 5 a.m. for a commute, You aren't just losing 25% of your sleep.
No, you aren't losing 25% of both stages. You are losing a staggering 60% to 90% of your total REM sleep.
60 to 90%.
Because it is so heavily concentrated in those late morning hours, you have fundamentally shortchanged your brain of its creative, consolidating, and emotionally therapeutic stage of sleep.
And losing either NREM or REM results in?
Profound physical and mental ill health. You cannot burn the candle at both ends and expect your brain to just pay its dues later. It doesn't work that way.
Let's pivot to the evolutionary history of all this. How far back does this necessity for sleep go? It must predate us significantly.
Oh, far earlier than most people assume. Sleep is ancient. It appeared at least 500 million years ago with organisms as simple as primitive worms.
500 million years ago.
It emerged before any vertebrate life, before fish, before reptiles, and definitely before dinosaurs. The sheer evolutionary tenacity of sleep implies that whatever function it serves, it is absolutely essential for life itself.
And every species that's been measured experiences NREM sleep.
NREM sleep is the pioneer. It's the original essential form. Full-blown REM sleep is the new kid on the evolutionary block, so to speak.
And that's only found
In warm-blooded creatures like birds and mammals, it seems the capacity for emotional and creative dreaming emerged much, much later.
This evolutionary necessity also explains the incredible diversity of how species accomplish sleep. I'm thinking of unihemispheric sleep.
It's a remarkable adaptation. Cetaceans, dolphins, and whales, they only experience NREM sleep, and they can sleep with one half of their brain at a time.
One half at a time. Why?
The other half must always remain awake to maintain movement, to keep vigilant against threats, or to make sure they surface for air to breathe.
And some birds do this too.
Certain birds, especially migratory ones, also exhibit this. They literally keep one eye open.
But for us, for humans, REM sleep demands a unified brain effort.
Absolutely. Humans always sleep with both halves of the brain, even if they're in different stages of NREM for a moment. But REM sleep, the dreaming state, always requires the participation of both sides of the brain at the same time and to an equal degree.
Which suggests its function integrating emotion and memory requires global communication across the whole cortex.
That's the thinking. The key message here is that 8 hours isn't some arbitrary number. It's the minimum requirement to ensure the brain gets both its heavy-duty cleaning from NREM in the first half of the night,
And its creative consolidation and emotional integration from REM in the second half.
and if you skip those last 2 hours, you've missed the most important appointment of the night.
So if sleep is the architect of the mature, functioning mind, it must start as the primary builder of the developing mind. Let's start right at the beginning, in the womb.
Yes, fetal and infant sleep.
What's happening there?
Well, the human fetus spends most of its time in REM sleep, especially throughout the second and third trimesters.
Most of its time in REM.
This high volume of REM sleep is absolutely vital because it acts as an electrical fertilizer during this critical phase of neural development.
An electrical fertilizer, I like that.
The dazzling, chaotic bursts of electrical activity stimulate the lush, rapid growth of neural pathways. It's effectively establishing the vast networks of connections, like installing all the fiber optic cables throughout the entire neighborhood of the new brain.
That sounds like an extremely vulnerable stage, then, if those electrical bursts are disrupted.
It is, and researchers point to alcohol as a major disruptor.
Why alcohol specifically?
Because it is one of the most powerful known suppressors of REM sleep. Alcohol consumed by the mother easily crosses the placental barrier, leading to immediate suppression.
And there are studies on this.
Studies on newborns of heavy drinking mothers showed significantly less time spent in that essential active REM sleep phase.
And the physiological effect on the unborn infant itself it's truly stark.
The data demonstrated a marked depression in fetal breathing during REM sleep. A normal breath rate during active REM sleep might be around, say, 381 per hour.
Okay.
When the fetus was awash with alcohol crossing the barrier, that rate dropped precipitously to just 4 breaths per hour.
From over 300 to 4.
That suppression of the key neural architect REM sleep during the critical window of development is profoundly detrimental to the entire wiring process.
Moving into childhood, we transition from that polyphasic sleep pattern of infants, many short snippets, to the monophasic pattern that industrialized society expects from adults.
Right.
Adolescence, though, is where the structural changes become intense and highly individualized.
Adolescence is defined by synaptic shedding, or what they call use-determined transformation. The brain engages in this final, massive overhaul of refinement.
Use it or lose it.
Exactly. It keeps the neural connections that have been used and proven useful, and it sheds those that are redundant. And this is when deep NREM sleep intensity rises sharply because it's driving that pruning process.
And this pruning happens in a specific directional sweep across the brain, which has huge consequences for teenage behavior.
Absolutely. Scientific observation shows that this rise and fall pattern of maturation begins at the back of the brain, in the areas governing visual perception and spatial awareness.
And then it progresses steadily forward.
The very last stop on this decade-long maturational journey is the tip of the frontal lobe.
Which is responsible for
Rational thinking, impulse control, and critical decision-making.
So you're saying the back of the adolescent brain, which handles perception, is more adult-like, but the front, the head office of critical thought, remains structurally more childlike.
Precisely. And the changes in deep NREM sleep intensity always precede these cognitive milestones. It makes it clear that deep sleep isn't just reflecting maturation, it is a driving, active force of maturation.
And compounding all of this is the notorious non-negotiable circadian shift that defines the teenage years.
This is so critical to understand. Teenagers are biologically wired for a later schedule. They are DNA hardwired night owls.
It's not a choice.
Not at all. Their internal clock releases melatonin much later than an adult's, making them incapable of falling asleep early, regardless of how tired they are or how hard they try. This is not defiance or a character flaw. It is their genetic fate.
Yet, society's ingrained bias, rooted in agricultural and industrial scheduling, just punishes them with absurdly early school start times.
They're forced to wake up at 6 a.m. when their prefrontal cortex, the control center for reasoning, is still in a disabled, offline, sleep-like state.
And this leads to
Chronic sleep deprivation across the entire teenage population, which, as the research shows, causes dramatically higher rates of depression, anxiety, obesity, cancer, and heart attack in this specific age demographic.
It's a systematic health injury we're inflicting on our children.
Yeah, it is.
That post-adolescent deep sleep doesn't stabilize for long, though. Aging is essentially defined by what the sources call the Great Sleep Recession.
It's an unstoppable decline that starts subtly in our late 20s and early 30s.
So soon.
By the time an individual reaches their mid-40s, they have lost 60% to 70% of the deep NREM sleep they enjoyed as a teenager.
60 to 70% is gone by your mid-40s.
And by age 70, 80% to 90% is lost.
Wow. That's a massive loss of the memory consolidating and pressure-releasing deep sleep state.
And it results in more than just fragmented sleep. It results in dramatically reduced sleep efficiency and disrupted timing.
What does reduced sleep efficiency mean exactly?
For many seniors, it drops below 70%. That means that out of an 8-hour period they spend in bed, they might be spending 1 to 1.5 hours wide awake.
And that's not a trivial consequence.
Not at all. Lower sleep efficiency is linked to higher mortality risk, clinical depression, and a loss of cognitive function. It often leads to forgetfulness that is tragically mistaken for the onset of true dementia.
And their circadian rhythm also regresses, right?
Yeah.
Pushing their internal clock earlier.
That's the timing issue. It causes the stereotypical early sleep onset and early morning awakening.
But unlike the loss of deep sleep itself, the timing issue is addressable.
To some extent, yes. Since the elderly often have a blunted circadian rhythm, taking melatonin can help.
I thought melatonin wasn't very effective.
It's largely ineffective for sleep maintenance in young adults, that's true, but in older adults, it can help boost their natural rhythm, slightly reducing the time it takes to fall asleep.
And shifting their light exposure can also help stabilize that early timing.
Yes. Many older adults get too much bright light early in the day, which reinforces their early schedule, and not enough bright light in the afternoon. So later afternoon, bright light exposure can act as a counterweight,
Helping to shift their internal clock later.
pushing their bedtime back to a more sociable time, and hopefully prolonging their morning sleep.
It's just so clear that sleep loss is dangerous because essentially it puts every major organ system on this high-stress, no-repair program.
That's a good way to put it.
Let's start with the immediate damage to the nervous system, focusing again on cognitive failure and driving.
The loss of concentration due to insufficient sleep is just pervasive. And the most common cause of fatal drowsy driving accidents is a phenomenon called a microsleep.
A microsleep.
It's an involuntary momentary lapse where the brain, partially or fully, shuts down for a few seconds.
And this usually strikes people who are just chronically restricted, sleeping less than 7 hours a night.
That's right. And the risk isn't just cumulative, it's exponential. The famous Dinges study proved this.
Let's go through those results in detail because they're astounding.
Dinges and his team took healthy volunteers and restricted them to 6 hours of sleep a night over a 14-day period, and they measured performance metrics continually.
And what did they find?
The results were shocking.
Yeah.
After just 10 days of consistently getting only 6 hours of sleep, the subjects performed cognitive tasks with the same level of impairment as if they had gone 24 hours straight without any sleep at all.
As bad as an all-nighter.
Exactly. And what's crucial is that the performance deterioration did not level out. The impairment just kept getting worse with every night of short sleep.
The deficit simply compounded.
Yeah. They found that 14 days of 6 hours of sleep was equivalent to nearly 48 hours awake. But here's the most dangerous takeaway from that study.
What's that?
When participants were asked subjectively how they felt, they consistently underestimated their performance disability. They thought they were fine to drive home.
So there's a profound, dangerous gap between objective impairment and conscious perception.
You cannot trust your sleep-deprived brain to assess its own performance. It lies to you.
Let's move from immediate safety to long-term systemic damage, starting with the cardiovascular system. Why is short sleep linked to such a dramatic spike in heart disease?
The numbers are stark. Short sleep is associated with a 45% increased risk of developing or dying from coronary heart disease.
45%.
And data from Japan, where they tracked workers over 14 years, found that those sleeping 6 hours or less were 400% to 500% more likely to suffer cardiac arrests.
400 to 500%. That is an immediate, deadly link.
It is.
So what's the mechanical link? What is lack of sleep actually doing to the heart?
The mechanism is stress. Lack of sleep throws the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight stress response, into constant overdrive.
So your body is stuck in a state of hypervigilance.
Like a car engine revving to a shrieking extreme all night and all day. This sympathetic activation accelerates your heart rate, it increases blood pressure, leading to chronic hypertension.
And over time, that erodes the integrity of the blood vessel linings.
A precursor to atherosclerosis. And at the same time, the body's ability to conduct routine maintenance and repair is shut down.
How so?
Sleep deprivation actively shuts off the surge of growth hormone, which is the body's great healer. This hormone is necessary to replenish and repair the delicate lining of the blood vessels, which are constantly being damaged by the elevated blood pressure.
So you have chronic strain and a lack of repair.
It's a physiological powder keg.
And the ultimate proof of this, globally, is the daylight saving time experiment we impose on ourselves every year.
It's the clearest evidence that 1 hour sleep reduction forced globally each spring results in a significant, measurable spike in heart attacks the very next day.
And the opposite is also true.
When we gain an hour of sleep in the fall, there is a corresponding drop in heart attacks. This is the clearest population-level evidence we have that sleep directly affects acute cardiac health.
Shifting to metabolism. It seems inadequate sleep sets a definitive path toward obesity and type 2 diabetes.
It does. It hijacks both our blood sugar control and our appetite.
How does it affect blood sugar?
The immediate impact is on insulin resistance. Short sleep can make the cells of your body intolerant to glucose, effectively blocking the efficient absorption of sugar from your blood,
Which instantly leads to a hyperglycemic state.
classifying you as pre-diabetic even if you are otherwise perfectly healthy.
But the metabolic destruction is compounded by this hormonal imbalance that makes us constantly hungry and directs us toward bad food choices.
That hormonal disruption is a massive factor. Short sleep causes concentrations of ghrelin, the hormone that signals hunger, the keep eating chemical, to swell significantly.
Okay, so more ghrelin.
And at the same time, it suppresses leptin, the hormone that signals satisfaction or stop eating.
So the sleep-deprived body effectively will cry famine in the midst of plenty, regardless of how much food you've consumed.
That's what the research says. High ghrelin and low leptin. That's why when we are tired, we aren't craving celery and broccoli.
We're craving pizza and sugar.
Exactly. Studies show that when sleep deprived, cravings increase by 30% to 40% specifically for sweets, heavy carbohydrate, and salty snacks. It's a toxic recipe for obesity.
Finally, let's discuss the immune system and the staggering link to cancer. This should be the fact that makes everyone drop what they're doing and go to bed.
It should be. Sleep is where we restock the armory of the immune system, and the data here is incredibly precise.
How precise?
Just one single night of 4 hours of sleep reduces critical natural killer cells by a staggering 70%.
70% from one bad night. And what do these natural killer cells do?
They are the immune cells responsible for recognizing and attacking malignant and infected cells, including cancer.
And that deficit isn't easily recoverable, is it? Even when you're facing a serious viral threat.
No. The efficacy of vaccines is severely compromised. If you get 4 to 6 hours of sleep in the week leading up to a flu shot, you generate less than 50% of the protective immune response compared to well-slept counterparts.
Less than half the protection.
And crucially, that diminished response is not salvageable, even after weeks of recovery sleep. The immune system needed the sleep before the shot.
The cancer link, particularly that mouse study, is alarming in its speed.
In that study, sleep-deprived mice suffered a 200% increase in the speed and size of tumor growth compared to the well-rested group.
A 200% increase. Why?
Because a lack of sleep causes this harmful shift in immune cells. It diminishes the necessary M1 cells, which actively combat cancer.
And it boosts.
It boosts the M2 cells, which actively promote tumor growth and metastasis.
And to wrap up this section on systemic damage, let's talk about genetic destruction. Sleep loss literally damages our DNA.
It does. 1 week of just 6 hours of sleep a night distorted the activity of a hefty 711 genes in humans. It essentially scrambles the instruction manual for the body.
But even more fundamentally, short sleeping attacks the protective caps on our chromosomes.
The telomeres.
Right. They're like the little plastic tips on the ends of shoelaces,
Yeah.
preventing the DNA from fraying.
It's the perfect analogy. Damage to telomeres makes our DNA vulnerable and accelerates cellular aging. Individuals routinely sleeping 5 hours a night may appear biologically aged far beyond their calendar years, compared to those routinely sleeping 7 hours.
The lack of sleep is speeding up the clock on every single cell in your body.
It is.
Okay, if sleep loss is that damaging, the flip side has to be that good sleep is the ultimate natural performance enhancer.
It absolutely is.
Let's focus on the benefits, starting with how sleep organizes, stores, and optimizes memory.
Sleep is essential for memory consolidation, which is the process of taking short-term memories and transforming them into durable long-term files.
And it performs two key functions at once: restoration and strengthening.
That's right. Let's start with restoration.
Okay.
NREM sleep restores a brain's capacity for learning by making room for new memories. It's a cleanup operation that allows the hippocampus, the memory processing center, to function efficiently the next day.
So the amount of deep NREM sleep you get actually predicts how much you'll remember tomorrow.
It's a powerful predictor. And specifically, the sleep spindles of NREM sleep are linked to actively restoring that learning capacity.
So NREM opens the door for tomorrow's learning, and then REM comes in to lock down today's learning.
Yes. REM sleep plays the role of the etching hand. It strengthens those remaining neural connections, and crucially, it integrates the new memories with the vast back catalog of old knowledge you already have.
It's an overnight recovery and blending service.
Rescuing fragile memories that might otherwise have been forgotten.
And this consolidation is not just a passive whole brain process, it's highly targeted.
It is, which brings us to the fascinating concept of targeted memory reactivation, or TMR.
This sounds like science fiction.
It is, but it's fact. Researchers learned that if they paired a newly learned memory with a specific sound cue, say, the sound of a cat meowing, and then played that exact sound quietly during NREM sleep.
The brain would.
What? The brain selectively boosted the retention of only those memories tagged for remembering, while avoiding the strengthening of untagged information.
That is incredible. The sleeping brain is intelligent and discerning. It's prioritizing certain memories for strengthening based on external cues.
It proves that sleep is not a general preservation tool. It's a selective enhancement tool. It's deciding what is most valuable to keep.
And this memory improvement applies not just to facts, but also to physical skills, procedural memory.
Right, like the story of the pianist.
That was that one.
It's a classic anecdote. The pianist spent hours practicing a difficult piece, consistently making the same error, and just reached this frustrating plateau. He went to bed.
And when he woke up,
He could just play perfectly. Sleep doesn't just solidify facts, it profoundly improves motor skill memory by replaying and refining the movements overnight. It literally eliminates the errors.
for athletes, this has to be the single most effective legal performance enhancer they have.
Absolutely. Lack of sleep increases injury risk in adolescent athletes by a massive margin. Conversely, post-performance sleep accelerates physical recovery from exercise-induced inflammation and stimulates muscle repair by allowing growth hormone to surge.
So teams that prioritize sleep see quantifiable improvements.
In reaction time, speed, and reduced injury rates. Definitely.
One of the most fantastical benefits, though, lies in the dreaming state itself. Creativity. It's where the brain seems to truly perform alchemy.
REM sleep provides a nighttime theater where the brain fuses disparate knowledge stores to foster impressive problem solving. And this process is biased towards seeking the most distant, non-obvious associations.
It's like performing a backward Google search on your own mind.
That's a great way to put it. It's linking concepts that wouldn't normally be connected in a logical waking state.
It's amazing to think that while we're completely checked out, our mind is doing more deep, creative work than it does all day.
The historical evidence supports this. This dreaming alchemy has led to Nobel Prizes.
Like Mendeleev and the periodic table.
Exactly. He dreamed the structure. And literary epics like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which she conceived in a vivid dream.
And this has been proven in the lab, too.
In laboratory studies, awakenings from REM sleep showed participants solving 15% to 35% more puzzles than NREM or waking states. The solutions just popped out effortlessly.
Beyond performance and learning, REM sleep is also crucial for emotional regulation. It acts as our overnight therapist.
It does. REM sleep is the only time the brain processes painful emotional experiences without the presence of the stress hormone, noradrenaline.
So it's processing emotion without the stress.
During sleep, we see a dramatic reduction in the reactivity of the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, coupled with a powerful re-engagement of the prefrontal cortex, which is our rational control center.
And that combination dampens the emotional pain.
We wake up feeling less reactive to the events of yesterday.
And the research into trauma shows that the actual content of the dreams matters for healing.
It does. Patients with PTSD and trauma-related depression only gained clinical resolution if their dreams explicitly involved the emotional themes of their waking trauma. The dreaming content itself, the mental reliving without the stress chemistry, was crucial for true emotional healing.
And this led to a drug application, didn't it?
Yes. This insight led researchers to investigate the blood pressure drug prazosin, which acts on similar brain networks to suppress that emotional overdrive.
And it alleviated nightmares in PTSD patients.
Earning it FDA approval for that specific use.
Knowing how critical sleep is for every facet of health, performance, and stability, it becomes clear that modern industrialized society actively conspires against it.
It does.
Let's start with the most insidious modern inhibitor: artificial light.
Electric light completely unbuckled us from the constraints of the 24-hour cycle. By overriding the natural loss of daylight, artificial light tells our master clock that the sun has not yet set.
And that prevents the timely release of melatonin, delaying our sleep.
Even dim light, just 8 to 10 lux, has been shown to delay melatonin release. And to put that in perspective, a typical living room is about 200 lux.
And that level has 50% of the melatonin-suppressing influence of full daylight.
Exactly.
And blue light, specifically from our screens, is the most potent suppressor.
It's the worst offender because of our marine evolutionary history. The sensor in our eye is most sensitive to blue wavelengths, which signals high noon and wakefulness.
So evening blue LED light has twice the harmful impact of older incandescent bulbs.
It does, and this is a profound behavioral issue considering that 90% of American adults use a portable electronic device within 60 minutes of bedtime.
Another chemical inhibitor, often mistaken as a sleep aid, is alcohol.
Alcohol is one of the most powerful suppressors of REM sleep we know of. While it may sedate you, alcohol-induced sleep is fragmented and fails to consolidate memory.
In fact, it weakens it.
In animal studies, it caused a 50% weakening of memory connections. It's a memory eraser, not an engraver. And even worse, the memory remains vulnerable.
What do you mean?
Information you learned on Monday remains vulnerable to disruption by alcohol you consumed on Wednesday night.
That is astonishing. The memory is still fragile days later.
It is.
And the third major inhibitor is thermal regulation.
To successfully initiate sleep, our core temperature needs to drop by 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. This is an active cooling process.
And how do we cool down?
We dump this heat via 3 radiating devices: the hands, feet, and head. If the room is too hot, it inhibits this natural cooling mechanism.
Which is why you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that is too cold than one that is too hot.
Always. Modern climate-controlled homes and excessive bedding often actively fight this natural thermal dump.
These personal habits scale up to massive societal failures. Let's look at the financial stakes of chronic sleep loss.
The economic cost is staggering. A Rand Corporation report quantified that insufficient sleep costs the U.S. economy $411 billion annually.
$411 billion.
That's due to lost productivity and health issues. This amounts to robbing most developed nations of more than 2% of their annual GDP.
Which, for context, is equivalent to the entire cost of a country's military.
The cost is enormous.
And nowhere is this institutional failure more evident or more tragic than in the healthcare system.
Medical errors are tragically the third leading cause of death in Americans, and the current standard for medical residency is just. It's rooted in a dangerous past.
What do you mean?
The system, which allows for 80-hour weeks and 24-hour shifts, was established in the 19th century by William Stewart Halsted. Historical records show Halsted was a chronic cocaine addict who used the drug precisely to bypass his need for sleep.
So we are still adhering to a system implemented by a man who was pathologically trying to avoid sleep.
Despite overwhelming evidence that working more than 16 consecutive hours is hazardous.
Given all this evidence, why is the medical establishment so stubborn about fixing the residency shift hours? Is it purely tradition?
It's a combination of tradition and cost. There is this deeply ingrained, antiquated, we suffered through it and you should too, mentality.
A rite of passage.
And then there's the cost argument. Staffing shifts with rested doctors requires hiring more personnel, which hospitals argue is financially unfeasible.
But the true cost of medical errors.
And the research showing that 1 in 20 residents will kill a patient due to lack of sleep, that vastly outweighs any perceived savings. Pilot studies limiting shifts to 16 hours have shown a 20% drop in serious medical errors, yet the system remains resistant to change.
Education is another system that actively damages young minds by ignoring biology.
Early school start times directly conflict with that biological shift in the adolescent circadian rhythm, leading to chronic sleep deprivation, which impairs the frontal lobe.
But the research on correcting this is crystal clear.
It is. When Edina, Minnesota shifted school start times from 7:25 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., teenagers gained an average of 43 minutes more sleep per night.
And this immediately resulted
in higher SAT scores, better attendance, and fewer behavioral problems. Later start times dramatically improve educational outcomes.
And we often compound this mistake with misdiagnosis, particularly ADHD.
More than 50% of children with an ADHD diagnosis actually have an undiagnosed sleep disorder,
Like sleep apnea or heavy snoring.
which imposes chronic sleep fragmentation and deprivation, and the symptoms of severe chronic fatigue, inattention, impulsivity, irritability perfectly mimic the symptoms of ADHD.
So treating the underlying sleep disorder often completely cures the apparent ADHD.
Often, yes.
When people finally seek help for sleep, many turn to sleeping pills. But the sources are stark about their minimal benefits and serious risks.
Pills like Ambien are minimally helpful. Clinical trials showed that patients fell asleep only 6 minutes faster than those on a placebo.
Only 6 minutes faster.
And they carry significant risks, including higher mortality rates and infection risk. And just like alcohol, Ambien-induced sleep caused a 50% weakening of memory connections in animal studies.
So it's sedating you, but it's not giving you the deep restorative sleep the brain needs.
Exactly.
So what is the recommended first-line treatment?
Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI.
CBTI.
The American College of Physicians recommended it as the first-line treatment in 2016 because it is substantially more effective than sleeping pills for improving both sleep quantity and quality.
But what does CBTI actually entail? It sounds like a generic term.
It involves several key behavioral components, notably sleep restriction therapy and stimulus control.
Sleep restriction therapy. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, but it doesn't mean restricting total sleep. It means radically restricting time in bed to consolidate sleep. If you are only sleeping 6 hours, you are only allowed 6 hours in bed, which builds powerful sleep pressure.
Can stimulus control.
That teaches you to break the psychological association between the bed and wakefulness. For example, if you can't fall asleep within 20 minutes, you must get out of bed and go to another room until you feel sleepy again.
And these lessons persist long-term.
Unlike the rebound insomnia you get when you stop taking pills.
Looking forward, how can we use technology to engineer a solution that doesn't rely solely on constant willpower?
We need passive solutions that work regardless of willpower. For instance, engineering homes for sleep.
Like smart thermostats that automatically program the necessary temperature drops.
Or using dynamic LED bulbs that actively reduce blue light exposure as the evening progresses, tailored to your personal circadian rhythm. NASA developed specialized bulbs like this for astronauts. We need consumer versions of that technology.
And using personal data to create a seeing is believing principle.
Absolutely. Using wearables to show people the objective reality of their sleep, how their short sleep directly predicts their sickness rates, their mood swings, their poor food choices the next day.
If we can tangibly demonstrate that immediate negative feedback loop.
That nudge can lead to significant long-term behavioral change far more effectively than abstract health warnings.
And we need massive public education to counteract the societal stigma.
The discrepancy is shocking. When university students were surveyed, 98% had received education on diet and 100% on exercise.
Yeah.
0% had received any formal educational materials or information about sleep.
About zero.
We need public campaigns about drowsy driving, which, again, is statistically more deadly than drunk driving. And we need to integrate sleep education into school curricula as a necessary life skill.
But if you had to give just one general, actionable tip that the listener could implement tonight, what is the single most effective habit for long-term health?
The single most effective habit is consistency. Sticking to a consistent sleep and wake time every single day, no matter what.
Even on weekends.
Especially on weekends. Using an alarm to set a non-negotiable bedtime and ensuring you wake up at the same time is critical. That discipline stabilizes your circadian rhythm, which in turn optimizes both your deep NREM and your essential REM sleep architecture.
It all comes back to rhythm.
It all comes back to rhythm. We started this deep dive by asserting that sleep is the most powerful anti-aging, anti-disease medicine. And the evidence has shown that lack of sleep is, well, it's a slow form of self-euthanasia.
Inflicting widespread, measurable damage on every major physiological system.
From cancer and cardiovascular strain to metabolic failure, it costs individuals, their health, and society hundreds of billions of dollars annually. You now have the full scientific knowledge to refute the stigma of laziness and to reclaim your right to a full night of sleep.
And as you reflect on this journey into the science of sleep, remember this final provocative thought. The body can never pay off a sleep debt. It's not like a bank. The necessity of sleep for memory and physical repair is often an all-or-nothing event for that specific day. We know the dangers of total sleep deprivation. It's fatal in rats in 15 days. So what aspect of your life, your long-term health, your creativity, your emotional stability, your safety on the road, are you betting on being resilient enough to withstand the debt you are carrying this week? Now go get some sleep.